Arthritis is not something that happens overnight. It's something that starts a long time ago. So by the time you actually see arthritis in a joint, it's basically an archaeological finding. So it's important when we do want to work with arthritis, prevention is really key, because we don't want to even get to where an animal ends up with arthritis.
Right.
Or we want to limit it as much as possible, and that means starting as soon as they're born, basically.
Okay, so eliminate unnecessary vaccines as much as possible. And like you mentioned, collagen. Does it help if we add like collagen-rich food to their diet, or does that help at all? Or
well, I don't think it can be translated quite like that. Obviously, we want to feed them a balanced diet, and if there's not enough protein, maybe adding a little bit of collagen might help. But it's a little bit like trying to translate the amount of cholesterol in an egg yolk to the amount of cholesterol that you will end up having in the body. Because way back when they were saying that if you eat too many eggs, you get too much cholesterol in your body. Well, it doesn't work that way. That's actually it doesn't translate that way.
Okay.
So I don't know how it translates if you give collagen, if it actually helps to build collagen, because things in the gastrointestinal tract, they get broken down into little particles into their individual things, and then they get absorbed that way. So it's like you're basically taking something, you completely disintegrate it, and then it goes into the body, and these little disintegrated parts are being used. So whether it kind of builds up back to what it was originally, the body, I doubt it.
Really?
Yeah. Well,
like the 5-element theories, I mean, don't they usually try to take the food that's lacking in your body?
Yeah. Yeah, but that's probably more because of the nutrients that are in it, not so much that it will actually rebuild, like reassemble the same thing. It's just more the nutrients that it takes in. So, when you eat eggs, then sure, you get fats and things like that, but then how the body uses them is then up to the body, depending on what it needs. It's not necessarily going to just make a bunch of cholesterol.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So depending on what the body needs, it will just do and shuttle, a particular substance to a certain area of the body. So for example, cholesterol can be used to make steroid hormones like testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, cortisol. These are all steroid hormones, DHEA. So that's at the base is always cholesterol. So if the body needs more steroid hormones, then whatever cholesterol it has will in part get shuttled to that, to the extent that is needed, depending on what the need is. So for example, if an amino acid, which is a particle, the smallest particle of that collagen, is needed for a particular thing, the body will then take it and use it there. So the body is very intelligent. It will take what it needs. It will also maybe not absorb everything it doesn't need. So there's a lot of intelligence in the body, and we humans try to manipulate it and control it and such, but it's so intricate. There's like a gazillion cells and more gazillions of biochemical processes that are happening every second in the body. So it's really, we can't control all of that. So the best thing is to give the body what it's made to be processing, feeding a species appropriate diet, which is basically what they would eat in the wild, or as close to what they would eat in the wild, because that's what their body's physiology is made to be processing and thriving on. Same in humans, if you feed some human cereal their whole life, dried, highly processed cereal, I mean, that body's not going to be healthy, and nobody would do that. We all know better than that. Like we need to eat some vegetables. Well, yeah, because a lot of these foods that are highly processed, that you find in a bag, dry foods, kibble, whatever you want to call them, they're highly processed. And in the process of processing, some of these, the carbohydrates and the fats turn into toxic chemicals that are then damaging the body and can potentially cause cancer. But not only that, a lot of these foods that you can find at the supermarket and that are touted as healthy for your animals, even by veterinarians, they're basically loaded with a lot of, leftovers from the human industry that is considered not, appropriate for human consumption. And so that all ends up in dog food. So these big companies, they have a lot of leftovers, they have a lot of garbage. So in order to make a little bit of money on that garbage, rather than having to spend money on recycling it or disposing of it properly, they put it into dog food and cat food. Obviously that's not healthy.
Right.
And there's no way that cells can function properly on an unhealthy diet, because cells need the nutrients that they need to function properly. In a way, it's like trying to build a house made of cardboard. That doesn't work. At the first rain, it will start to shrivel up, or in the Chicago area with the high winds we have, it go flying. So then you're left with your sofa out and, have the sky with the stars above you. So that doesn't work. So same with our animals, we have to give the body what it needs, but we also have to remove what it doesn't need, because if we have a deficiency of nutrients, the cells can't function properly. But if we give the cells something that is poisoning them and damaging their ability to function, those are really the two causes of disease. One is deficiency and the other one is toxicity, and oftentimes they go hand in hand. Oftentimes we have both going on, and that then causes malfunctioning of cells. If we have cells of the pancreas that are malfunctioning, then we may have pancreatitis, or we may have a lack of enzyme production, so digestion doesn't work properly, or we may have not enough insulin and have an animal that then becomes diabetic as a result of it. Or if the kidney cells aren't functioning properly, then they have kidney problems. Or thyroid cells not functioning properly, we have hypo or hyperthyroid in case of cats. When we approach the body to heal it, what we want to do, we want to provide it with what it needs for all of the cells of the body to be able to function properly. Then all of the cells of the body can all heal all at the same time. So if you're then, supporting the body's function, then the pancreas can heal, the skin can heal, the eyes can heal, whatever may not be functioning properly can then start to heal and improve, which is not something that conventional medicine can do, because they don't really support the body's function. They just help to kind of extinguish the fire, basically, or put a Band-Aid on it. Nutrition is really important, so that's usually pillar number one. That's always where I start when I work with my animal patients. I want to put them on a nutrition that really nourishes the body and helps it to function better. And then a big part of that is also working on the gastrointestinal tract, because the gastrointestinal tract is where all the food is broken down and then absorbed into the system. And so if the gastrointestinal tract is not working properly with that, then obviously we can have a deficiency happening just because not enough nutrients are being absorbed. And the gastrointestinal tract also houses the microbiome, which is basically all of the microbes that we have in and around our body, and every part of the body that has a connection to the outside world, like the skin, the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the ears, the lungs, the bladder, the GI tract, etc. They all have a different microbial population. And when it comes to the gastrointestinal tract, that's where most of these microbes live. And they can be very much affected by things that we spray in and around the house, all the disinfectants, the glyphosate, which is the active ingredient of Roundup, chlorine that comes in the water, fluoride that's in the water. There are a lot of things that we are using to sanitize things that then also end up destroying the microbiome in the gastrointestinal tract. And just to kind of share a little bit about how important this microbiome is, we can look at numbers. The number of microbes in the gut outnumber the number of cells by a factor of 10. So there are 10 times more microbes than there are cells in the body. And from a genetic perspective, the microbial genetics outnumber the body by a factor of 150. So there's 150 times more genetic material in the microbes than in the body itself. So based on that, who's running the show here, right? It's the microbes. And they produce vitamins, they produce serotonin, melatonin, neurotransmitters. They produce all sorts of other types of chemicals that help the immune system. So they're like, without a good microbiome, the body cannot function properly. And so restoring that is very crucial. And it also then helps, with restoring the microbiome, it also helps to restore the gut lining, which is just one layer of cells that's lining the inside of the gut. And a lot of times these cells are, not closely connected anymore. And we call that leaky gut. And then we can have particles that go through that then end up cause inflammation in the entire body, because anytime we have particles that go through these cells, between the cells, they're too big, and then the immune system goes, wait a minute, what is that? So they start attacking it because the immune system sees it as a foreign body. And then as a result of that, because these foreign bodies are in the blood vessels that float everywhere in the body, there ends up being inflammation everywhere, including the brain too. So that's where the gut-brain connection comes in. So when there's inflammation in the gut, there's inflammation in the brain, and then behavior can change. So gut health is crucial for that. Yeah. And then the third pillar, once we have a healthy gut and the nutrition is in place, then I do start with a little bit of detox with my animal patients, because we do live in a world that is loaded with toxins. So I want to help the liver and the kidneys, to get rid of some of these toxins. But first we have to have, sufficient nutrition so that the body, the liver can actually do its job. So that would be pillar number 3. And then I also like to work with the nervous system a lot, because the nervous system basically innervates everything. It's one of the communication systems of the body. And if we have a breakdown in communication, then obviously that always results in some form of issue somewhere. Right. And oftentimes that can be, for example, hind leg weakness. It can be weakness of certain muscles that then cause instability in a joint, which then causes arthritis down the road. That's kind of how it starts. Injuries, they're more prone to injuries as well. But the nervous system also innervates internal organs, the kidneys, the liver, the heart, the gastrointestinal tract. So by working with the nervous system, we can really optimize that communication to all of the different parts of the body, which then as a result also function better. And I always liken nerves to a water hose. So if you step on a water hose, there's not much water coming, but as soon as you step off the water hose, there's a lot of water flowing again. So nerves are like that. And so, treatment of the nervous system via manipulation, chiropractic work, for example, that can be instantaneous. You can see results right away, which is really very rewarding. Maybe that's why I like it so much, because it's like instant gratification. Yeah, and I use it as a diagnostic tool as well, because very oftentimes the nervous system is involved in some fashion. And so if I can get that out of the way, I can see what's left. So instead of, for example, if an animal can't jump up on the couch anymore, all of a sudden it didn't just get old overnight. Right. There may be a bit of a nervous system issue to that particular, the hind end, for example, and it's just not as strong as it was, jumping up on the sofa, for example. And so when I work on the nervous system that way, then that can be fixed, pretty quickly. And if it doesn't, then I know there may be more going on that needs to be explored. Sometimes it could be an animal that, God forbid, has a tumor in the spine that won't allow it to, work properly. But anyways, it can really be a bit of a diagnostic tool in that regard. And there's one patient that comes to mind, a Great Dane who had a lot of GI issues. She would kind of lay on the couch and be really uncomfortable, start panting like crazy, and then she would sit up, and then eventually she would start burp. She would burp, and then she'd be fine again. After like a couple of months of trying going the conventional route with doing some gas X and just trying some different things that didn't really make any difference, she came to see me, and I did a little bit of chiropractic work, and she was feeling better afterwards, but not to the point where it was resolved. And so she came back, and I looked at her a little bit more from a bit of a different angle. And I noticed that her stomach was a bit like a rock. There was not a whole lot of movement there. It was just kind of stagnant. And so I did kind of undo that a little bit so that there was more motion in the stomach. And the owner then went home, and like about half an hour later or so, I got a text with a picture of vomit that contained like a bunched up pair of socks. So that pair of socks had been in there for a long time, and they tried extinguishing the fire with gas X, and they would have had to do a whole lot of other things, and just doing that manipulation just kind of cleaned it out. And that was the end of that. And I mean, it was we were lucky in that regard that it worked out that way. I mean, she could have had a tumor in there too, or something else, but I always start with like the simple, straightforward things that can rule out a lot of things, because especially when it comes to arthritis and weakness in the rear end, for example, people will always say, we'll always grab like supplements like fish oil or hemp oil or whatever it may be. Whereas in fact, it would need a little tweaking, and then you can save all that money on these supplements that the body then also needs to process, and obviously also don't resolve the problem. So, in that sense, we can also use natural medicine as a fire extinguisher and a band-aid. And that's why, I also get a lot of people that come to me and say, well, I thought it was a holistic vet, but they weren't that holistic after all.
Yeah.
Because they just, instead of using antibiotics, they would use an herb, or instead of using steroids, they would use an herb instead of fixing the underlying problem, so you can use anything as a band-aid,
Right.
So it's important to kind of look at the underlying cause, and that's what holistic medicine then really does. Yeah. So then next pillar, number 5, would be hormones. Hormones are crucially important, and anyone who has ovaries and a uterus knows what that means, right? Especially when the ovaries start to shut down and go into menopause. Definitely you get very familiar with how amazing hormones are. So they also are a communication system in the body. They are just doing the communication via chemistry, like chemical substances, whereas the nervous system is more electrical. So hormones are crucially important. Without hormone levels that are appropriate, nothing can work properly. And nowadays I do see a lot of animals with hormone issues, because a lot of the chemicals that we find in the environment are chemicals that are fat soluble. And these fat soluble chemicals, they will accumulate in fatty tissue. And that includes the hormone glands as well, including the brain too, because the master hormone gland is in the brain, the pituitary gland, and the hypothalamus as well. And so when we have accumulation of these toxins in there, it can destroy the hormone glands, and then they just really can't work. And so then as a result, we have to help replenish these hormones a bit. But in any case, so hormones are important. So I will look at hormones depending on what's going on with the animal, and if I have a suspicion that they may be involved in the disease process. And then also fitness and exercise, that is really crucially important, vital, cannot be missed, should be done. I don't know how else to put it, but it's like, fitness and exercise is like a wonder drug. I mean, you can save so much money on that. Your animal will be happier. It will have better health. because there's more blood flow. So all of the organs function better because there's more oxygen going to all of the different systems. So they work better. They will have good musculature. So they will have much less arthritis down the road, etc. So fitness and exercise is really, really, really crucial. But just like in humans, it has to be done correctly because you can also do damage.
Right.
For example, throwing a ball and then the dog kind of running and then stopping and turning on a dime, you know, while it's still moving forward sort of thing. That is so bad for the joints, you know, and then, you know, frisbees, you know, jumping in the air like 5 feet and then landing funny. Yeah, that I don't recommend at all. So just because you don't want to go for a walk and throwing the ball back and forth in your yard, that's not a good idea. And that's not
waiting for a cruciate ligament tear to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you can pretty much be guaranteed that something will happen. If you do have to do that, you know, throw balls, then throw it into a bush or something where the animal has to stop before it actually gets there. Because otherwise it'll just run into the bush, and no dog is going to just run into the bush, well, generally speaking. So you want to make sure you do it safely. But yeah, fitness and exercise is crucial. And when I do some, you know, research on fitness and exercise for animals, usually what comes up is the humans, because they say, yeah, if you have a dog and you go for a walk, it actually improves your health.
Oh.
When I put fitness and exercise dog, and then the benefit always comes up for the humans as well.
That's funny.
So definitely, if you do have an animal, you know, take them for a walk. And I have to say, when I first came to the US and I saw all these dogs just sitting home alone for like 8 hours, 12 hours, not getting a walk, just going around the block, and then that was it. I'm like, what's going on here? You know, in Switzerland, everybody goes for a walk. I mean, we had a small care terrier and we would walk her an hour every day, her whole life, rain or shine. And believe me, there was more rain than shine, and snow and wet and cold. And
you lived in Switzerland, right?
Yeah, I grew up there.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So she got exercise every day of the year. 365 or 366 days of the year. There was no day that was skipped. So I have no compassion for people who complain that the weather is bad. Sorry, but no compassion. Yeah. I mean, obviously in Chicago, when it gets like really, really cold, you know, it becomes a health hazard to go outside and walk them, because, you know, their feet can freeze and that sort of thing. So, you know, you have to do it within reason. But even if it's like a few degrees below freezing, that's not really an excuse to not go. So
would you recommend it for dogs with arthritis as well?
Well, obviously within reason. I mean, it depends on what the animal is able to do. Certainly if they're, you know, if they're worse after you exercise them, then you did too much. So if they do have a lot of arthritis going on, then you want to make sure you work on helping that arthritis to resolve a bit, you know, and decrease inflammation, provide them a little bit of anti-inflammatory support, and can be with CBD oil, you know, golden paste, which is basically turmeric and coconut oil and pepper, you know, things like that. And, you know, if it's really bad and affecting an animal's quality of life significantly, then of course, you know, sometimes we also have to use drugs. But even when they have arthritis, you still want to keep them moving, because if they don't move, they will lose muscle mass and arthritis will only get worse.
Right.
So you have to work on both decreasing the level of pain and discomfort, while you're also increasing the level of activity so that they can build a little bit of muscle. And if you have to work with a vet who does a little bit of rehab and has underwater treadmill, for example, and they can help you with different exercises that can help strengthen the muscles without putting too much you know, wear and tear on the joints that are already affected, then I would recommend that, because there's a lot of things that we can do when it comes to arthritis, for sure. So yeah, fitness and exercise, super important. And then last but not least is emotional and mental well-being. And that may be a little bit more for humans, because we're the ones who bring home the stress. We're the ones that worry all the time. I mean, certainly we have a lot of animals that have anxiety, phobias of, fear of some thunderstorm and other loud noises and things like that. So we certainly need to address that, with training, obviously counter conditioning sometimes. We can also provide them with supplements that can help calm things down, but also all the other pillars that we already talked about will hugely affect how an animal will behave and feel. Because if the whole body doesn't feel great, then the mind cannot feel good either. Because, for example, when I'm tired and I have to talk to someone to help me fix the computer or something, I get really not very nice, I have to say. I'm sorry for any technicians out there, but the wellness and the body affects how the mind and the brain work. And so that's really important. But certainly paying a lot of attention to our own health and our own well-being and our own stress levels is important, because dogs, they smell the cortisol level on us, the stress hormone. So if you come home, they smell that you're stressed out. They already, they get it as soon as you come in the door. So it's very important that we kind of pay attention to our own mental well-being and such. So,
oh boy.
So anyway, so that's like the short of the 7 pillars of health that are really necessary to put everything together. Because personally, I had a lot of health issues. I had chronic fatigue syndrome, and then later on, I got rid of that. And then later on, I ended up with an autoimmune disease because a pony had stepped on my shoulders and knocked me over. And as a result, I had a slipped disc in my neck, which was causing a radiating pain down my arms, which was excruciating. So my doctor put me on some pain meds, and they basically caused, triggered an autoimmune reaction. So then I ended up having pain everywhere. So in any case, in the process of that, obviously that was my learning journey, unpleasant as it was. This is why I know what I know today. But what I figured out was that if you only piecemeal things, you're not going to get anywhere. So you have to really apply all of these 7 pillars pretty much, kind of at the same time, or, in the proper order anyway, in order to be able to achieve that health. Because let's just say you're just providing better nutrition, but you don't fix the gastrointestinal tract at the same time, then that better nutrition may actually not work for that dog, because the gastrointestinal tract can't handle it.
Right.
Like, for example, if they have a sensitivity to chicken, for example, and you give them a great food that's made out of chicken that is supposed to be super healthy, that dog's not going to do well with that, because it has a sensitivity to chicken. So we really have to address all of the pieces of the puzzle to put it together, because the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So that's Aristotle who said that thousands of years ago. So that's where all the smart people came from. Anyway, so from my own journey, I realized we just have to put all the pieces together and in the right order. There's obviously a timing for things. You don't want to start detoxifying before you fix the gut and give a good healthy diet, because the body won't be able to detox safely and will just get more sick. So that's definitely something you don't want to start without building up first, building the foundation up a little bit, because that itself will already start the detox process. But you can do a lot when it comes to toxins. Remove what's in the environment. Environmental working group, they did a study, and they found that women had put on, I can't remember what the number was, but I think it was in the hundreds of different chemicals on their body every day, and men too. And where are these chemicals going aside from your body? They're going to go onto your pets because you're touching them, right?
Oh no.
So there's a lot you can do just to kind of get rid of all of these chemicals in and around the house, which will decrease the burden on the animals.
Yeah.
Stop with the spraying for mosquitoes and other pesticides that are being used. You know, get rid of the fire retardant furniture. You know, if you buy furniture, get some that doesn't have all the fire retardants in them, because they're very toxic to cats in particular, because cats, they constantly lick themselves.
Yeah.
So whatever they lay on gets into their system, and
Right.
that's how then they end up with all these issues with the thyroid gland, for example. So there's a lot you can do, you know, in the house. You know, get rid of the scented candles and the plug-in scented things that are highly toxic anyways, and the dryer sheets, and what else? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
I think.
House is full of those things.
Yeah. You know, make sure there's not a bunch of chlorine and fluoride and other chemicals in there. You know, get a good filter, because there are a lot of pesticides, herbicides, you know, drugs that end up in the water system, you know, because if somebody is on antidepressants, they go to the bathroom, it gets peed out, it goes back into the water system. So, you know, if you don't filter your water, you're basically taking polypharmacy. You know, you're basically on a bunch of drugs that you don't even know you know you're getting.
Sounds so depressing.
Well, it is, because we have made a mess of this planet, that's for sure. And it's time for us to clean it up, and that's why so many animals are sick, so many people are sick. This is our wake-up call, basically. So we're basically pinned against the wall right now. So it's do or die right now.
Yeah. So online resources like you have, it's going to be so helpful for a lot of dog owners and pet owners.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for your time today, Dr.
No, thank you. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Same here. Yeah, thank you so much for your patience.
Yeah, thanks to everyone who's going to listen to this, because you're the change. You're the ones who are making the changes. So
I'll do my best.